here's another thing. Okay, so I said that Voodoo and Catholicism have a lot of actually close relations. Everyone's like, I'm like, no, I mean, it's just history. So when the Spanish, actually, when an Italian led the Spanish to kill all the people, the natives on Hispaniola, what ended up happening on that island is slaves were taken from Africa to Hispaniola in place with this new open ground. Thanks, Columbus. And the Catholicism mixed with the previous religions of Africa, and it created Voodoo. See, I'm not actually kidding, it's just history. And that's why, so in these various African practices, there was a lot of praying to gods, and in Catholicism, there's a lot of praying to saints, but it's the same thing. So when these things combined, it created Voodoo. And there's a lot of similarities between Voodoo and you're like you necessarily, I know your mind freaks, dude. You're like, Voodoo, that's bad, and you get scared of it. Magic is never one or the other. It's how it's just like any other magic. It's like you going into the cathedral and praying to your saints or lighting the candle, or you praying to Jesus or whatever. It's the same thing. It's just, it can be applied differently. Some people pray to the devil, right? That's a problem. So it's just whatever you decide to do with it. It's not good or bad. Stop. But, and so some of the similarities include, you really don't believe it? Well, in Voodoo and some of the more traditional practices, they have sacrifices and they have cannibalism and they have drinking blood and stuff like that. Well, where do you see this, you guys, in the church? Body of Christ? You're eating Christ's body and symbol. You're drinking his blood and wine. And so these are ways that Voodoo, you see how it's merging? Right. And so, it doesn't, and also I'd like to state, not all Voodoo uses sacrifices. It's not all done in sense. And I'm just not if it is or not. It's sort of a dated thing. I'm not going to say this, I'm just saying it's sort of dated. And it's not necessary. There's other aspects. I mean, I've done Voodoo that's not. It has nothing to do with that, and nor is it dark magic. I know you guys cannot handle this talk, but let's just go there. Lighting candles, like I said, making dedications or offering fruits or foods or whatever to an altar, that's Voodoo as well, but it's interceding Catholicism. This is why, as you're like, well, what kind of witch are you? I'm like, I don't have a label. I'm not Wiccan, I'm not Voodoo, but it's a mix of Catholicism, shamanism. It's a mix. And that's why I just gave you the title Chaos Magic, if you cannot handle it by title itself. But all that means is that I'm taking aspects of many things, including pantheism, including Catholicism, including Celtic. A lot of Celtic stuff comes up, and German witchcraft specifically, on terms of how do you, but you saw me do this in my room, how do you bind a bad witch, and I'm putting it in the room, that's German, how, calling the corners or calling forward certain elements, or this is Celtic, things with blessing water, this is, or a lot of cultures, but Celtic use it as well. Blood magic. What the fuck do you think this tattoo is? Why did I get it here, you guys? Yeah, this, but why? This is the closest point to your heart. Right, that's what I'm saying. Right. Getting a tattoo is blood magic. So I know you can't handle this talk at all, but I didn't just make this stuff up. And so I'm going to put a link. So I'll find something on the crossover of Voodoo and Catholicism, but also, but that existentialist magic can exist. So even though I did come into this and you're like, well, you couldn't have been a witch if you were an atheist. That's not true. That's not true at all. because you can recognize, I've always, since I was a little kid, I was talking about I was practicing dreaming stuff. It was interesting, very Celtic-based training. Very specifically Celtic, how to, no one taught me, I just how in your dreams to be invisible, how in, I don't like that one, because I always end up stepping on some sort of motherfucking leaf and being like, God damn it. How to morph into animals, how to, different things. And you make fun of this and go, it's crazy. I'm like, it's ancient. You just don't understand it because certain religions took over and banished certain things. You can call it crazy. I'm saying I didn't make it up. This is all stuff that predates me, to some extent. And I can go off on all the magic that you saw on camera, and I have, but can you exist as an existential squishy? Yes, because all you're saying is, like, for example, this morning, if you heard, I'm talking about why do people use a wand? Why do they use a wand? It's just a way of, it's just a way of focus. It's just another way. It's just a tactic. A candle. What are you really doing? You're focusing. Is it necessarily that the candle is magic? Could be. Could have been blessed. Could have got a specific intention behind it. Or it could just be your way of focusing your intentions. Right? And so I went from one line of thought to recognizing that both exist. For me, this is what I believe. And so it's not to say that I couldn't have been a witch and been an existentialist. Absolutely. And I'll put up an article of how it's more of a psychological approach to say it's self-mastery and cause and effects. Your thoughts become your words, become your actions, so to speak. Right? And the only difference was me recognizing you going, the magic is a force beyond me, beyond anybody. It is also an independent force, and there are things that you can tap into that are beyond human consciousness. Okay?